I feel the spirit moving in me. I feel the spirit moving in me.
And our affirmation today says, I find peace during life's storms, knowing that the divine presence within me guides and strengthens me. Let's say that together. I find peace during life's storms, knowing that the divine presence within me guides and strengthens me. And so it is. Please have a seat. How are you doing today? Wow, it's great to see you. It's great to be here. Thank you for taking this time in your wonderful Sunday to come and join us at Unity on Maui. I've been gone for 3 weeks. I was on sabbatical, and my amazing partner and I were in Banff, Canada for that 3 weeks and just had an amazing time. And I'll show you a couple pictures that I took later on in the service today. Thank you. Oh, I feel refreshed and rejuvenated and grateful that that you make it possible for me to take 3 weeks of sabbatical, to be present and to work on a project that I'll tell you about in a little bit. Got to keep a little suspense, right? Know that you're going to hear something in a few minutes that I hope inspires you and inspires me. All right, so let's see. Where should we go from here? I'm looking for a prayer chaplain, and it's probably the ever-present, all-knowing, and always active Marlene, who's going to pray with us this morning.
Hello. Aloha. All right, let's just close our eyes. Take a deep breath. One power, one presence. Yes, God. God is. Feeling this breeze, hearing the birds. I know that there is divine order in this world. And we see it permeate each and everything. Divine love is presence as well. I am knowing that this power and this presence is the only activity in, through, and around each and every single one of us. I am knowing that this power and presence is joy, peace, harmony, love, abundance. And we are so grateful for this wholeness, this knowingness that God is right here in the midst of us. I am knowing that this service is filled with incredible wisdom, incredible peace and healing. And I'm knowing that Blaine is providing the messages that we all need to hear at this time so that we may carry this out into the world and bless each and every single person we meet. And I know that each and every single one of us can share this message joyfully and easily. And we are so grateful for this celebration. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Thank you, Marlene. And Marlene is going to be operating our video camera this morning that is projecting our service onto Facebook Live. So thank you. Welcome all of you watching us on Facebook this morning. And we have a daily word reader, and it's Emily. Let's give Emily a big hand. Woo! So we're going to find the right, shall we do the right day today?
Sure.
It is the 22nd, according to my careful calculations. There you are. And you might want to have this too. Thanks.
Healing. My thoughts words, and actions affirm wholeness. Wholeness is my true nature. Even if I am facing a health challenge, divine life is active in every cell of my body. Knowing this truth, I hold healing thoughts and speak life-affirming words while making sure to give my body the rest, nourishment, and care that will help it heal. I refuse to allow thoughts of sickness or weakness to grow in my consciousness. I seek support among friends and family who share my belief in wholeness. As I have been supported, I offer my support. I feel honored when I am asked for healing prayer. I look beyond the appearance of illness, and with faith-filled vision, I behold and affirm the wholeness that is seeking to express more completely in the lives of those for whom I pray. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" John 5:6.
Well, speaking about wading in the water, a rabbi, a priest, and a unity minister were out fishing in the middle of a lake. The priest tells his two colleagues, "Oh, I left my fishing rod in the car. I'll be right back." So he gets out of the boat, walks across the water to the beach, goes in his car, and gets his fishing pole and walks back across the lake and into the boat. I have to say that Unity Minister was amazed at what had just happened. A little while later, the rabbi says, "Oh, I need to go to the toilet." I guess they would call it that. So he too gets out of the boat, walks across the water, finds the nearest men's room, and walks back across the water, gets in the boat. Now, I have to say, that Unity Minister is now dumbfounded and just can't believe what he saw. But he says, "You know what? I have as much faith as they do." So he gets up, stands up in the boat, steps out of the boat, and under the water he goes. The rabbi and the priest grab him and pull him back on the boat, and he's like shaking himself out. He's like, "I know I can do this. I have a tremendous amount of faith." So he gets up again, right, and steps off the boat, and again sinks in the water. And they pull him back out again, and he shakes off the water, and he's like, "I just have to focus. I just have to focus. I just have to be faithful, and, I pray every day. I do all my affirmations and everything. I can do this." So he gets up, falls in the water. And this time the rabbi and the priest bend over, and they pull him back on the boat, and as they're doing so, they say, "Do you think we should tell him where the rocks are?" You might remember the story of Aung San Suu Kyi. She was a tiny, intense woman who was a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And she spent nearly 15 years in home detention between 1989 and 2010. She had a personal struggle to bring democracy to the then military-ruled Myanmar, also known as Burma. This experience made her known internationally across the world. And she was a symbol of peaceful resistance in the face of oppression. She was shut away from the country that many believed that she should be leading. Suu Kyi maintained her calm and her inner peace through meditation and deep contemplation and standing for non-justice, or for standing for justice and violence. Do we have any idea what's... I'm going to call upon our sound tech. Let's give Mike a hand here. Maybe he can help us figure out.
I think it might be the connection with the transmitter.
Oh, okay. We often have to perform these medical operations in the middle of a talk. Checking my batteries. All right, let's see if that works. So, I don't know, is it something I'm doing or maybe something I'm thinking?
You forgot where the rocks are.
I forgot where the rocks are. Now, she maintained her centeredness and her focusedness. Okay. How's my antenna, Captain?
Sorry, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Wish I knew.
Yeah. All right, if it does it again, I'll just move to the other mic. Yeah. So Suu Kyi said something that's very profound. And I've been looking at what she says and really trying to figure it out. Because it does seem that it's something that's prevalent in our world today. She says it's not power that corrupts, but fear. Fear of losing power corrupts those who yield it. And fear of the scourge of power corrupt those who are subject to it. So there's fear on both ways. It's pointing to me that it is fear that causes turmoil. Causes turmoil in our inner world and in our outer world. So what we're talking about today is how can we find our centeredness in the midst of the fear that we sometimes experience. Not to say that any of you ever have any fear, but like Suu Kyi, we're going to look at how we too can develop our meditation practice, our mindfulness practice in a way that can help us to find inner strength, to be present in the most powerful way, to deal with the challenges of fear in our lives. So my question to you then is, how do you react to sudden changes or the storms in your life? And maybe, if you're like me, sometimes I do a great job with it and sometimes not so good. You say that's true? Right? Sometimes we're focused and centered and we're not in that place of fear, but sometimes things can happen that just plain freak us out, right? And we lose our centeredness. You know, the truth is, and I know you know this, that peace is not dependent on our external circumstances. Right? But it certainly does seem like we can let our external circumstances affect our peacefulness. Suu Kyi is an amazing, powerful example of being in that place and not letting disturbances affect her peacefulness. And that we too, like her, can find our peace regardless of external circumstances. So the purpose of this talk today is to help us discover how we can find peace in the midst of spiritual storms in our lives. Emotional and spiritual storms in our lives. So this is the first talk in a 3-talk series based upon the miracles of Jesus. We're going to look at the miracle of Jesus walking on water, which is what we're talking about today. Next week, we're going to look at the healing of the blind man. And the third week, we're going to look at the feeding of the 5,000. And how can we look at these stories that, happened a long time ago? How can we find the relevance in them for our lives today? So we're going to look at the connection between Suu Kyi's story and this Bible story of the disciples on the Sea of Galilee. She was surrounded by the political storm of a dictatorship, a military part of the government that wanted to control the people and control her. And she was able to find peace in the midst of that. In the same way, the disciples were in a relatively small boat on the Sea of Galilee. Remember the story? And it's an incredible storm. Now, mind you, these disciples are experienced sailors, they're experienced fishermen. But despite their experience, this storm that they faced was overwhelming. They see, and then you can imagine it's a storm, and they see Jesus walking, or actually they see what they think is a ghost, right? Walking on the water. And it's kind of interesting because often the things that we fear are like ghosts, right? And so they were afraid of this thing that they thought was a ghost, when in actuality it was Jesus coming to offer them a solution to their challenging situation. And in fact, I think Jesus might have said something to them when he saw their fear, like, hey, what? You've never seen a ghost before? And then he said, have courage, do not be afraid. And I love Peter's reaction, right? Remember, Peter jumps up and he's like, wow! He says, he sees Jesus walking on the water and he's like, wow, can I do that too? And Jesus says, yeah, come on in, bro. The water's fine. And so Peter stands up and he steps out of the boat. What happens? He sinks. He's able to stand there, the story says, for a moment, right? And then he notices the wind. He notices the rough water, and down he goes. And Jesus pulls him up and puts him back on the boat. Now, and he says, you have little faith, how could you doubt? Because it was Peter's doubting in that moment that caused him to sink. He forgot the truth of who he was. Wow. And then Peter's like, Jesus, how did you do that? And I know that the way it happened was Jesus just said, just imagine that balloons are holding you up. I don't know if they had balloons in those days, but it's kind of an interesting idea about imagine that you are held up. How do we avoid the storms in our lives? And how do we avoid sinking in the ocean or the sea? We do that by holding the truth, remembering that we are always held up. So let's look at the metaphysics of this story. It's really quite a beautiful story. And we look at something metaphysically. It means that we're going to metaphysics means beyond the physical, right? So we're going to look at beyond the physical representation of this story to the spiritual message that it has for us. Now, the boat in this story represents the sense of safety. It represents that safe place in our consciousness, that safe place where we feel safe, where we feel secure, where we feel in control. Got any places like that? Okay, the storm represents the inevitable challenges that sometimes face us in our lives. Ever have any of those? And these can be fears, they can be emotional upheavals. And the fact that it's a storm represents that these things come and go. Have you ever noticed that, things can be going along fine, and then all of a sudden something shows up, and there's a problem, a challenge, and we become afraid. And often, in some time, that storm passes. Jesus in this story represents the Christ consciousness, right? Which is the highest possibility for ourselves. It represents that place where there's no fear. It represents that place where we come from our true essence, from the life, the beingness, the energy, the perfection that we are at the very center of our beingness. And Jesus walking on the water, I love this part, represents our ability to walk above our emotions, right? Water typically, metaphorically, metaphysically, stands for emotions, right? So Jesus is demonstrating by walking on the water that he is present to all that's going on, but he's able to rise above his emotions, to rise above the fear, to rise above the doubt, to rise above the critical thinking that we sometimes have that keeps us from being totally focused in the moment. And Peter represents stepping out into the unknown. Lots of people think of Peter as representing faith, right? It's the faith or the ability to step out of what is known into that which is unknown. Ever done that? I know that we've all done it at some point in our lives. So Peter represents us, right? The part of us that says, you know what? I can do this. I'm going to make this happen. I have the courage. I have the wisdom. I have the power. I have the juice. I have the knowledge. I'm going to step out of what is comfortable, this boat, into the unknown. And Peter sinking in the water represents what happens when we become filled with doubt or unease or become fearful. And so then, as you know, Jesus takes Peter and they get back in the boat, and all of a sudden the sea is calm. And this represents the inner peace that we find when we stop resisting life's challenges and trust the divine presence that's within us. You know, the truth of all this is that challenges don't stop coming. Have you noticed? We'd like to think that on this spiritual path, right, you got it, right? I got it. I got the wisdom. I got the understanding, right? And it's so funny. To me, it seems like often the times when I think I got it, the universe challenges me and says, "Oh, really? Then how are you going to deal with this?" Right? And so, the beauty of this work that we get to do, working on being spiritual beings in a physical body, in a physical world, is that we're constantly given the opportunity to rise a little higher, right? To remember the truth of who we are. So I've got a couple spiritual truths that we can learn from these stories. And the first one is that following inner wisdom helps us overcome fear. See, Peter stepping out of the boat and sinking and being brought up out of the water by Jesus, by that Christ presence within him, was a lesson for him that he could overcome fear. By staying grounded in that inner wisdom, in that inner truth, we can do the same thing. The next thing that these stories show us is that the challenges that we face are temporary. The storms in our lives tend to come and they tend to go, yes? And so, as we stay grounded in this inner wisdom and have patience, we can work through all of the challenges in our lives. And the second thing, or the third thing that these stories teach us is that the divine presence is always near, right? That Jesus raising Peter out of the water reminds us that that divine presence that Jesus represents is in you. It is the truth of who you are. It is the power and the wisdom and the love that you have within you that can raise you up out of the doubt and the fear. And the next one isn't always so fun, but it's true, and that is that stepping out of our comfort zone leads to growth. Right? Because that's where we grow. The majority of the truth that we understand, the majority of the wisdom that we understand happens as we explore our spiritual paths and step out in the possibility. And often the falling or the seeming drowning, right, that Peter went through happens to us in order so that we can grasp new understanding, that we can grasp spiritual growth. It'd be great if it was just roses all the time, wouldn't it? You know, but if stuff didn't happen that got our attention, would we pay attention? Right? If everything was easy, we think, oh, wouldn't that be great? Everything is easy. Some people think of the kingdom of heaven being like that, right? It sounds kind of boring to me, right? You know, the kingdom of heaven, of course, is right here. It's Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is where? It's at hand. It's right here. He never said that it was up in the cloud somewhere. The kingdom of heaven is right here. I'm reading a book called Soul Boom, which I may do a series on after this. And in this book, Soul Boom, the author talks about when he was young and some Jehovah's Witnesses came to his house, and his family was Baha'i, and they embraced everything. And these Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on their door one time when they were having a Baha'i meeting, and they invited them in. And the author's dad asked the Baha'i people, or asked the Jehovah's Witnesses, what is the kingdom of heaven? And they said, oh, it's this beautiful place, you know, with streets are paved with gold, and it's so amazing, and everything that you want is there, and it's so beautiful. And his dad said, well, that's interesting. And they said, well, what do you think the kingdom of heaven is? And the author's dad says, well, imagine that the clouds opened, and from the clouds came cement and wood and tools and trees and all these building materials. And then floating down and landing on this pile, it says, this is the kingdom of heaven. Build it yourself. Right? Isn't that makes so much sense to me. Right? The kingdom of heaven is right here. We get to create the kingdom of heaven. In the next part is the next wisdom we can learn is that we are always supported even when we fall. That this Christ presence within us, this kingdom of heaven that we get to build, offers us all these tools. Even when we make mistakes or we fail or we make wrong decisions, we have all these tools to turn this situation into the kingdom of heaven. We are always supported. So how can we practice? What are things that we can do to bring on the kingdom of heaven in our lives? So I have 5 practical ideas to help us do that. And the first one, I talk about it every week, and that is to cultivate daily mindfulness and meditation and introspection, right? Just to find even a couple minutes. People say, oh, Rob, I don't know how to meditate. I don't have the ability to concentrate. Well, just take a minute every day and just turn within and listen and be present, be mindful, and take that into all that you do. To be present in the moment with what is happening right now, in this moment, in that moment in your life. Just as Suu Kyi relied on meditation, what helped her remain strong was her meditation practice, her introspection practice. And we too can have that peace if we just take a few minutes a day to remind ourselves of the importance of being present. You got that much time, don't you? And the second thing that we can do is to take action even in the face of fear, right? To take action, to kind of pull up your bootstraps, right? And stand up in the boat, even though it may seem fearful, and step out of the boat and try something new. Try something creative. Try to be present in a new way. Take time to do some meditation. Take action. I've had a dream for a while about writing a book, right? And I have never really thought of myself as a writer. I inherently am a terrible speller, right? But in the last year, I've had this feeling that there's something that wants to come out of me. And I wrestled with, what is that? It's a book, I feel that. Is it a book, a fiction book? Is it a factual? Is it an inspirational book? And I've really come to realize just recently that I want to write a spiritual fantasy book, right? About fantasy characters, much like the metaphysics that we're talking about today, who these characters are in all of us. And so I've been playing with this, and on my sabbatical, I spent a bunch of time working on this book, right? And facing the challenges that are involved. Because in the process, as I'm starting to get in this writing process, I realize, oh my gosh, I have to have interesting characters, right? Who have depth, who have positive and negative qualities. I have to come up with some kind of a plot that's interesting. I have to have some kind of spiritual realization that my characters have that I don't explain, but I show, right? Nobody wants to be told. People who might read this book don't want to be told, but they want to be shown who these characters are. I have to think about the plot, and it's like, wow. So I found this software that I had to learn how to do this software that gives you some tools. For example, you write about all your characters and you log your characters in a certain place in the software, and you talk all about them and develop them, and then the software helps to give you some ideas on how to expand the characters, how to create a plot. It's amazing. So I came up with, this is the working title of my book and a working cover for my book. And it's I'm titling it The Mountain of Mirrors. And it takes place in Kathmandu, at the base of the Himalayan mountains. And my character is a normal young woman who is relatively naive. And she is called upon through a disaster to connect with herself and help her community by finding out who she is. So now you don't have to get the book. I have to say I have no idea where it's going. I have no attachment to it. But what it is, I'm just finding that I have so much peace, right? Because I'm working on something that wants to come through me. And it's given me like this peace and this feeling of creativity, this ability to create something that I have no idea where it's going, right? Just to call upon that presence. In Canada, I had dreams about it, right? And I'm like, wow, I guess these characters are speaking to me. So the whole idea is that I'm saying is, I'm taking action on this, even though I'm afraid to do it. I've been afraid that I have no idea where it's going. And so I'm encouraging you to do the same thing, to step out there with something that is calling you. Because I know many of you, and there is something I know as human beings, spiritual beings, having a human experience, there's something that wants to come through you. And I found tremendous peace in this. And what I've discovered in the process of writing this talk and looking at Suu Kyi and looking at Peter, just imagine what would have happened if Peter didn't step outside that boat. He may not have become the person that he became, right? He was one of Jesus' strongest followers. He's a great representation for us of stepping out and doing something that doesn't seem logical, right? Something that take a chance. What if Suu Kyi didn't stand up against the military? Can you imagine if she looked back at her life and said, I had the opportunity to do this, but I didn't do it? And I can only imagine the peace that she feels in her beingness because she stood up and she stood up against the military and said, this isn't right. And she, I believe, feels peace as a result of that. So what is it in you that wants to come forward from you? And the third thing that we can do is to shift our focus from the storms in our lives to inner calm. To realize when the storms come, to take a breath. And do that with me now. Let's take a breath and relax and be present in this moment. When a storm comes, it only takes a moment to say, oh, there's a storm here, and to stop and take a breath. Connect with the essence of who you are. And to remember that you have all that you need to move through that storm. Whatever it is, whatever is calling you right now, whatever it is your highest self wants to be, just take a breath and let that happen. And the fourth thing that we can do is to use an affirmation to anchor our intentions. And there's a couple that I like. And one of them is, I trust the divine within me to guide me through this storm. When the storm comes, we know the power of affirmations. We know the power of intentions for helping us to focus the truth of who we are, to pull in all of the qualities that we have to be present in this moment. So say this affirmation with me. I'll say it once and then say it with me. I trust the divine within me to guide me through this storm. Say that with me. I trust the divine within me to guide me through this storm. Can you feel the power in that? You know, there's power in just recognizing that something is a storm. It's something that's passing. It's something that's real in this moment. Oh, there's a storm. And I have the power to move through this storm. And then another affirmation I like is, I am calm and at peace no matter what's happening around me. Ever think that might be useful? Anybody ever have any challenging moments, right? And what if something challenging happens, and what if you just say, you know what? I'm calm and peaceful in the midst of this. No matter what's happening, I am calm and peaceful. Say the second one with me together. I am calm and at peace no matter what's happening around me. And breathe into that. Feel that. Let that resonate in every cell of your beingness. And I've only got one more. And that is to practice compassionate action. And this, again, is about being mindful. It's about being present in the moment. It's about promoting dialogue or being in that place wherever you are of not bringing angst into the situation. Right? This is about being present, making a conscious effort not to be a shit disturber. Right? I mean, we do have that tendency when our ego wants to snap back at somebody. Get them, right? Ever feel that way? Yeah. So this is to say, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to be I'm going to practice compassionate action. I don't want to be a shit disturber. Right? Just imagine what it means to be a shit disturber. What are you dealing with all day? There's got to be better choices, right? So find that place. When you get that angst and it's like, I got to get back at this person. I got to say something that shows my power, or shows my anger. Just say, stop. Stop. Respond with love. Be compassionate. Can you do that? And this part of this is to encourage forgiveness and reconciliation. To practice forgiveness. Forgiveness for ourselves when we get in that place. Take a breath. Forgiveness is a hard one for a lot of people. Forgiving ourselves is a hard one for a lot of us. right? Because we think we owe it to ourselves or owe it to the world, owe it to God maybe to be angry, to not forgive people, to not forgive ourselves. You know, life is going to always have storms. They come in the form of personal struggles or fear of the unknown, emotional turmoil. And like Suu Kyi, we can find peace by setting the intention to do so. No matter how intense the storm might be. The story of Jesus walking on the water reminds us that the divine presence is not something outside of us. That divine presence that we all desire is right here. And we can access it in any moment. And the challenge that we have is to be able to do so. By trusting this inner wisdom, we can walk above the storms in our lives and find peace no matter what the circumstance. So this week, in the future, when a storm arrives, and I imagine a storm will, because that's what storms do, I invite you to pause, to remember what we talked about today, to take a breath and say, I'm going to respond in compassion to myself, to other people. And I invite you to use your spiritual tools to spend time in meditation, to ground yourself frequently in the peace that is the truth of who you are. And to know and to affirm that this higher power is expressing itself as you. This is your truth. This is who you are. Connecting with your higher power can help you walk through any storm, can help you get out of the boat, walk across the water, because you know where the stones are. So I invite you to close your eyes. Breathing in and breathing out. I find peace in the midst of life's storms, knowing that the divine presence within me guides and strengthens me. Breathing in and breathing out. Imagine that you are in this boat of life, out upon this amazing, immense sea. Imagine that all of the things in your life, all the storms in your life, all the people, all the challenges are here to remind you of who you are. You're not the storm. You're not the waves or the rain or the wind. You are the consciousness of love. You're the beingness of light. Here to bring love, light, and healing to the world. Even though those other things may be calling out to you, remember who you are. Take credence in your power, in your love. Breathing in and breathing out. Let's take a moment, and I just invite you to call upon this peace that you are. And allow yourself to experience it in every cell, every space, every tissue, every thought, every feeling. Right now. I find peace in the midst of life's storms, knowing that the divine presence within me guides and strengthens me. And I invite you to begin to bring your awareness back to this moment. Breathing in and breathing out. And to open your eyes whenever you're ready. So it is. Next week, we continue this 3-week series based on the metaphysical teachings of Jesus, the miracles of Jesus. Next week, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about the opening our spiritual eyes and the healing of the blind man and what that means for us. What does this story that we probably all learned as children have to do with us? And just a little hint, it is about opening our own spiritual eyes so that we're not blind and being able to see the presence of God in everything. I don't think I gave too much of that away, did I? And so I think that about wraps it up for today. Next week, Ames will be back, I understand. John will be here, and we're going to have more of the same kind of fun we had today. So why don't you please stand, and we'll say the prayer for protection together, and then we'll move into a circle and sing the peace song. So for ourselves, for this ministry, for all life, let's pray together the prayer for protection, which begins, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us wherever we are. God is. God bless you. Thank you for being here on Facebook this morning.
Where I live, there are rain.